Okay, hi. One short question. Please raise the hand who was attending or was not attending the last speech but is here now. Oh, it's quite a lot. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Christian Piller and he is Sebastian Wolfgarten, and we will talk about honeypot forensics at this late Tuesday afternoon. I guess it's Tuesday. I tend to speak a bit not too loud, so if I'm not loud enough, just call louder, and I will try to speak louder. So just right in the middle, this is our agenda. What we're doing now is the preface. For all those people who are not attending the last speech, and also for those who was attending the last speech, we will just give you a short introduction of the honeypot technology, maybe a bit other view than the last speaker did, and then is our thematics, what you can see here. Since it's a pretty lot of stuff, we will try to make it fast, but if you have any question or it's too fast, just tell us. Okay, that's me. I'm working now at the European Central Bank. I'm an IT security expert. I'm doing penetration testing, and and IT security and IT projects.
Yeah, first of all, hello to all. Thanks for showing up at this time of day. Some information about myself. I'm working at Ernst & Young, obviously, and I've been working for Ernst & Young for more than 2 years, and mainly I'm doing IT forensics and pen testing, which means that we try to break into corporate or state-run networks. Kristen and I used to be colleagues, and beside that, I wrote books for Edison Wesley, and I helped people writing books for O'Reilly. So that's about myself, and I'm handing over to Kristen to start with the actual introduction to Honeypot.
Okay, hi. We have some ideas to motivate you at this late evening. So if you are looking, really interested in the topics, we have some giveaways. Okay, so. Okay.
Please do us and the people organizing the con the fairness, and do not leave the trash here afterwards, please. Yeah. And in the end, we also have a very, very special gift for someone. So please stay interested.
We have a lot of giveaways, but as you can see, I'm maybe not the best dropper in the world, but okay, that's enough. Maybe I give it to Sebastian. He can motivate you. Okay, what is a honeypot? Honeypot is an information system resource whose value lies in unauthorized or illicit use of that resource. This means honeypot is a system to be compromised. The resource or the goal of the existence of the honeypot is to be compromised. This is its function. But, however, if it gets compromised as a honeypot, it's something different. Honeypot is an information system to be compromised. But if it gets compromised, which means that the attacker knows that this is a honeypot, then at that point the honeypot is not a honeypot anymore. Okay, that's the definition. What functions does a honeypot have? Sorry. It can mitigate risk. It means that if an attacker is inside a corporate or a university network, And he's looking for an easy target, an easy shot. And he sees a system which looks easy to be compromised. And he compromised this system, and this system is a honeypot. In that case, this triggers an alarm. So we mitigate the risk from the real IT systems to the honeypot. IDS functionality. Since this is not an IDS, that's the reason why it's called IDS-like. If an IDS is placed in a network, a corporate or university or doesn't matter network, normally there should be no traffic take place between the IDS system and any other system. So if such a traffic appears, then we know that this is an intruder. This is IDS. And the third one is actually research to know about any attackers, what are the goals of the attackers, what are the tools of the attackers. Okay, there is some more. Find out who is attacking you. Evidence that since a honeypot is heavily surveillanced, this can help you to collect evidence of the attacker. Maybe your other systems are not surveillanced as well. They have the logging not enabled. So if they are attacked, you will have no evidence on it, what happened or who was it. But on the honeypot, you have the evidence. You can go for trial. In case knowing on the research is also something, to know more about who is attacking you, more about the tools, and more about what's happening outside. Here, by the research, honeypots are also a very good tool to detect worms or viruses, so automated attackers, not only manual hacking. Okay. Downside of deploying a honeypot. Of course, honeypot is also just a technique, and it has positive sides and negative sides. And on the negative side, we have the limited view, for example. Honeypot can capture only attacks which are directed against the honeypot. So if a honeypot is placed in the network system and and somebody attacks your database server next to your honeypot, you may not notice it. Additional risk. Honeypot is an extra component in your network. So as any other components in your network, it increases the risk. It increases the stress, increases the likelihood that something happens in your network. And the remaining risk is also related actually in this theme, that if somebody managed to hack your honeypot without you noticing this guy, and this guy hacking from that honeypot system further, other system, maybe outside your network, you will be in a big trouble. Okay, how to classify honeypots? Sebastian, I guess you should motivate the people, because some people is just leaving. We have different, so. Okay, so honeypot classification. Low interaction honeypot is a system which emulates only parts from a real system. So it emulates only one service. And there is actually no real interaction. Yeah, this statement is not true. Because there are some interaction, but this interaction is not to be compared with the real system. So one example is Honeypot. Honeypot can emulate services. There are scripts which runs if you conduct that service and honeypot answering you. Honeypot can even, Honeypot can even emulate the TCP stack of the system, but it's still not the real system. So the attacker may easily find out what he's going. And HoneyD has not all properties of the real system. So it just emulates, for example, Telnet and HTTP, but does not emulate any other services. Yeah, medium interaction honeypot. That's a category, yeah, which we are always discussing about it, if it really exists or not. Some experts says that gelled or custom-built environments with limited access are medium. Some experts says that there are no such category as a medium interaction honeypot. Yeah, we will talk about it a bit later. High interaction honeypot is actually a real system built to be a honeypot, and it's heavily surveilled. If we combine several honeypots, we will end up with a honeynet. Okay, low interaction honeypots, more details about it. They are typically very easy to install, maintain. It's emulating only one or more or some of some services, maybe the TCP stack. But there is no interaction between the underlying operating system, or at least shouldn't be. There are also very easy and low interaction honeypots, which are actually only one file. You start it and you have your honeypot working. And actually they may only emulate a service. For example, they have port 25 open. So they are listening on port 25. But if somebody connects to that port, nothing happens. The only thing that happens is that you will get a warning on the computer that somebody tried to connect to the port 25. But the attacker who tried to contact the port 25 wouldn't have any interaction. This is actually the one end, and the other end in low interaction honeypots is actually HoneyD, which can be very complex, or HoneyD can emulate very complex systems, even with delay in the network, or more systems in the network with routers and stuff. But it's still a low interaction honeypot, okay? Yeah, advantages, good to start if you are new to the honeypot business. As I told you, easy to install, lower limited risk. Yeah, and analyzing and logging is simple. Okay, next one. Disadvantages, it's boring. You never find a zero-day exploit with a low interaction honeypot, for example. And this is because no real interaction for the attacker is possible. Yeah, can only capture known attacks. Okay. Yeah, medium interaction honeypots are a bit, gives a bit more interaction. But it's still a separated environment with limited capabilities. Actually, we are not really interested on medium interaction honeypots since we didn't know any product which is a medium interaction honeypot. Okay. Okay, one more. Yeah, the real interesting stuff is the high interaction honeypots. High interaction honeypots usually a real operating system. So it's a real operating system, but it's somehow surveilled and somehow restricted. With with the high interaction honeypot, you try to control the attacker without limiting him, and that's actually very hard because you never know what he will do. Yeah, it's very interesting to see from the outside what other people are doing. Yeah, this is maybe it's some kind of voyeurism, I guess. So a lot of people like to watch other people what they are doing. and this is the same. You can learn a lot about the attackers. How does it going? How does he going forward? What tools he use? Everything possible. This is very interesting. We will have later some case studies where we will tell you very interesting things what we seen outside. Okay. Disadvantages. It's because you have two goals. First, you don't want to limit the attacker to allow him to do what he wants to do. At the other side, you want to control him, not to do any bad stuff. So hack other systems from your network, and you also don't want to let him to recognize you that this is a honeypot. And these two criteria are just the opposites of each other. So it's a very narrow line where you have to move. The second point is analyzing a compromised system is extremely time consuming. It's approximately 40 hours for every 30 minutes which the attacker was spent on the system. And this is quite a big number. It's really, we was just sitting nights in our lab and looking for bloody traces from somebody who was just compromised our system. And the third one, what we've also already mentioned, that if somebody is inside your network, you have to be very cautious that he doesn't introduce any new risk into your system. So if he's inside, you have to somehow separate those guys and take care that he's not doing any bad stuff to your network and to network from other people. Okay, I guess it's okay. Okay, some examples, just really slow, fast. Sorry. Back Officer is a free honeypot, is a low interaction honeypot for Windows system. This can emulate some services like Telnet, FTP, SMTP, and log anything which comes into that port. Which actually you just have to click on it. It's running, and that's it. Actually, it's pretty boring because logging is very limited, and is missing a lot of functionality. Missing. Yeah, actually, the deception toolkit and the HOICD is also such tools for Linux systems. Yeah. Some other. Honeyweb is a very interesting product. This is a small web server which pretends to be an ISS, for example. You can even run, I guess, SQL or PHP and everything possible, but it is not a Microsoft IIS server. But it emulates it. It's actually very effectively. Mantrap is a commercial tool. I cannot say anything about it because I never seen it. Yeah. Yeah, tools. Okay.
Okay, I'm now going to talk about what you have to do when you install your own honeypot. And besides the products we just saw, we're going to talk about how to prepare to install your own honeypot. First of all, it hardly depends on the type of technology you use in order to deploy your own honeypot. So, for instance, in case you use a low interaction honeypot, you need to make sure that the attacker is not able to access the underlying operating system. That is very important, as there may be bugs in the honeypot software that may give an attacker the ability to access either the underlying operating system or even execute arbitrary code or something like that. So you have to make sure that basically you use the latest product available, and you also ensure that, if possible, create an environment that is realistically, which means that, for instance, HoneyD can simulate up to, I think, more than 65,000 hosts, so you can implement routers, you can implement basically network structures, so this will give you the opportunity to emulate a corporate or a more professional network. In case you use a medium interaction honeypot, whereas this is not quite sure whether they really exist, because you want to start with like something like a low interaction honeypot, which is quite okay in the beginning. We did start with that as well, but you want to go on to high interaction honeypots later on. So medium interaction honeypots are not really very cool, because well, what you can do is you can create a jailed environment or chroot environment and just or UML environment and put somebody in there. But I mean, there may be chances, and at least that's true with chroot, and I don't know about jails, but people may be able to escape from that environment, so it might be dangerous. So give those guys a real operating system to work with, give them high interaction honeypots. So make sure that you do use firewalls, intrusion detection systems, this kind of stuff, to control what's going on the honeypot or in the honeypot, because as we will see later on, it can get very, very difficult when it comes to people attacking other systems from your systems. And we actually plan to have a lawyer with us to tell us more about it, but he told us what we should tell you. So unfortunately he's not here, but we will discuss later on some of the difficulties involved with deploying honeypots and then having people attacking other networks. Also, if possible, poison the honeypot, which means that you install stuff like Zebek. We just saw it in the previous presentation. It will give you the ability to basically record every keystroke the attacker made, and that may give you the ability to reconstruct the attack afterwards. And this is very important, because we deployed honeypot where we did not use any IDS firewalls or whatever, and we did not poison the honeypot at all. So we were not able to say, well, look, the attacker typed in that and that, and so that was very, very difficult to reconstruct the attack. It was almost hardly impossible. So you depend on the attacker making mistakes, which is not always the case. So if possible, use those advanced techniques like firewalls and intrusion detection systems. Also, what's also very important, yeah, this one is quite funny. If you don't have a vulnerability in your software, then it's not going to get exploited. The guy previously talking was saying, well, my honeypot did not get exploited. Well, look, if you don't have any vulnerabilities, then who should exploit it? Okay, there may be 0 days, but I mean, it's a hard way to get like 0 days. And if you start your own high interaction honeypot in the first place, then you're probably not going to get 0 days. Anyway, use tripwire or aids to actually get like MD5 hashes of all your files, and then you can easily see what files have been changed by the attacker. Okay, then we come to the do's and don'ts of installing your own honeypot. First of all, don't expect too much, which means it's a hard way to go. Of course, you should read stuff like the books and the documents online at honeynet.org, and they will encourage you, or at least they did encourage us, to basically create honeypots. And it's a cool technology, and it's fun, definitely. It's very challenging, and you can learn a lot, but don't push yourself too much, because in the end, it all comes down to the fact that this involves technology. It might involve people that might be better than you, so it could be a hard way to catch the first 0 day for you. So just start with something very small. Then also one thing which is very important. Well, if you buy your first computer, or if you have a spare one for deploying your own honeypot, be sure to wipe it, because if you're going to and wipe it properly, not like format C and then be happy, but use proper tools that you can find, like use DD maybe, or do use that stuff that was published by people like THC or by Fino Elite, and basically ensure that all the information is wiped, because later on, if you do the forensic analysis, you might end up finding files that are not really from the honeypot, but maybe your old Windows files, you don't know. So yeah, be sure that basically you wipe the drive before you use it. And of course, before ever touching the hard drive, or the evidence, as the correct term is, you have to basically to copy it. As I said early on, I'm working at Ernst & Young in the IT forensic section. And we often have to analyze digital forensic cases where people have hacked something or there was a fraud or something. So basically, make sure that you copy the evidence and then afterwards start to analyzing it. Although we may come to a point later on where you actually face a system that has been hacked or is suspected to be been hacked. So we will later on discuss what to do in such an environment with the volatile and non-volatile information. We'll talk about that later on. Yeah, then another thing is, by the way, do you copy, like, do you make like photos of every slide? We can give it to you afterwards anyway. Okay, but you can go on if you want to. It's just I see you taking pictures like all the time. Okay, anyway, go ahead. Yeah. Well, okay, anyway. Okay, okay, we go on. We go on. Okay. Basically, give the attacker and the honeypot enough time to live, which means that give it a reasonable amount of time to basically let it be exploited. And we have chosen in the last honeypots we deploy. We always choose time periods like 2 weeks or something. That is usually okay. And do not put any production data on the honeypot. You should put like some fake data, but not like real data, because it's going to get exploited, and you don't want to put the real salary data on the honeypot. And don't ever make this mistake. I made it myself when in the first honeypots we deployed. You're going to be very curious what happens to your own honeypot. What did the attacker do to your honeypot? What's the system like? Was it used for other attacks, or what the story is? So basically, don't ever connect to your own honeypot while it's in the wild. Not only because maybe the attacker is gonna spot you, but it's also about modifying the evidence, and that's something you shouldn't do. Okay, and we go on, and I'm going to introduce you to forensics. Basically, we call this one "No Stone Unturned," and basically, it's a nice pun. It's a nice play on words, because basically you have to unturn every stone, every bit, every byte that's on the system. So it could be that an attacker installed a rootkit which is hidden normally, and you have to dig in memory or in some hidden directories in order to find the files that the attacker put on the system. So basically, it's all about turning everything upside down. But basically, there's a very nice definition. It's called computer forensic involves the core proof, preservation, identification, extraction, documentation, and interpretation of computer data. Well, that means that it's very unlikely that you will go to court with your own honeypot. Well, you could, but I will talk about later that there is actually a very interesting law in Germany that will more or less prevent you from going to court with your own honeypot. But however, in case of forensics, you probably have to ensure that your data and your investigation is court-proof, and that will include steps to document and to interpret everything correctly. Yeah, it's more of an art. Well, that's likely true, because it can get very messy when you start working with a honeypot or with a computer forensic investigation at all, because as Christian correctly said, we spend more than 40 hours analyzing maybe 15 or 20 or 30 minutes an attacker spend on the system, so it takes ages. And well, sometimes you think what you're actually doing there and sitting like hours in the lab and trying to find some important bits and bytes, but still it's an interesting thing, and so it's more of an art in a way. Yeah, well, and this is very important, and as I said, we're going to talk about this later. Honeypots are always a problem when it comes to law and legal regulations, and we're going to talk about the stuff that will happen if you monitor the attacker, or if the attacker starts to attack other systems and these kind of stuff. Okay. Well, the thing is, if you start if you start your own investigation, you have to follow a very clear and a very well-defined methodology, because basically, if you do not follow these steps, in case you have to go to court, you're going to get wrecked. The people will tell you, well, you did not do that, or you modified the evidence before it was even secure, and this kind of stuff. So in order to be code-proof and in order to ensure that you are okay with yourself, you have to basically acquire the evidence without modifying it. That seems to be very, very simple, but it can sometimes be very, very difficult, especially if you want to collect volatile information, which means information that will go away when you turn the system off. And so when you obtain that information, you will automatically modify the system. Then also, after you copy the system, you have to ensure that the copy you took is actually the same data that was previously. And of course, when you analyze it, you must not modify it. And the last thing to know is that document everything. When you come to a point where you actually start your own investigation, you should write down what you did, where you found information that might be a puzzle that you put together later on, and it might help you to actually do a forensic investigation. And as I said, if it comes to court, everything is important. Okay, then as I said earlier on, volatile versus non-volatile information. Basically, this is very important because there are some cases where the important bit of the attack, for instance, if somebody inserted code into the running kernel dynamically, then you're not going to find it if you turn the system off. And or the guy that showed the Solaris rootkit today, you will probably not be able to find the information if the system is turned off. So we have volatile information, which is information that is stored in the RAM or temporarily somewhere, and when you turn the system off, it's gone. It's not existent anymore. And then you have the non-volatile information where the information is still there even when the system was turned off. And the most important question is what to do with the volatile information in a forensic investigation. Because this is the data that is really interesting, like the list of running processes, the network connections, and the list of open files.
Sorry, I just want to add here that I see today a very interesting presentation, and which is also relevant here. I don't know if anybody was attending the FireWire presentation. So for the first one, this is a very actually effective method. If the system has a FireWire card in it, as we learned today, the FireWire is by default and by hardware, so it's not a software feature. By hardware can copy information and memory information from the system. So that's a good way to copy all the memory from the computer and save it on the disk, and so you can ensure that volatile information is saved. Because okay.
And one important thing is also that the Solaris guy that presented the rootkit today said that he basically escalated his own privileges by basically giving his own process root privileges through the kernel. And you're not going to find this kind of stuff if you do not collect those volatile information. So if you go on, then we see what I already said, that volatile information is going to be destroyed when you turn the system off. So the ultimate question is what to do with all the information. Well, there are some experts say turn off Windows, every Windows system. You come to an incident or you think the system might be hacked, just turn it off, and well, you're going to analyze it afterwards, and just fully shut down Unix-based systems. Well, this is not hardly true, because if you followed rootkit.com, which is a very valuable information resource, there are things that might, for instance, hook the kernel while it is running. So it might dynamically inject its own code into the running system. You're not going to find this stuff if you turn the system just off. And on the other hand, if you fully shut down a system, the attacker might have placed a script which is run when the system shut down, and then everything is deleted. I mean, you might be able to get this information afterwards, reconstruct it, but you're not going to be sure. So we say choose your poison, because sometimes you will find yourself, for instance, I've been involved in several forensic investigations in several large financial institutions, and basically, and sometimes you come to the incident site, and they say, look, there's a server, we already turned it off, and there you go, just analyze it. and then you're not able to get the volatile information. So it hardly depends on the situation. Sometimes you are able, and I would say that even though you are modifying the evidence, you might be, especially in an incident response case, you might be tempted to just collect the volatile information, then turn the system off completely without shutting it down. Sometimes it's a bit of a game in a way, because you might lose information, but you also might gain something. So choose your poison. Well, what you have to do is, when you collect volatile information, is you have to have a CD, not a USB stick or something, because that will, at least on Windows, modify the running system again. Use a CD-ROM or a DVD which contains information and tools and documentation that will help you to collect volatile information. For instance, Helix is a very, very good collection of those tools. Bless you. And it's like Knoppix in a way, but it's used for forensic investigations only. It's a very, very good project. The website is efence.com/Helix. And you always have to think about what tools to put on a system you would use for basically collecting volatile information. On Linux or Unix in general, that would be the usual stuff like ps, netstat, ifconfig, date, grep, blast, cat, ls, lsof, fdisk, mount, and this kind of stuff. On Windows, this can get very, very sneaky, because recently, like in the last 2 years, there was stuff developed that, as I said, like 10 times already, injects code into the running kernel and this kind of stuff, and this is very hard to spot. Tools that are very, very good is Vice, for instance, or stuff like the Process Explorer, or we're going to use later on stuff like Recmon, basically Fport. All these tools might help you to collect volatile information from the system that you can use later on. And what is very important, don't store the information you just obtained on the same system that you're going to analyze, because then again it's useless, you modified it. Be sure to use a network, like boot another system with Knoppix and then use netcat to move everything over, cryptcat if you want to, or SSH if you want to encrypt it, and then you'll be sure that you're not going to modify the system. After you obtain those volatile information, it's very important that you actually forensically, which means that you make a bit-by-bit copy of the entire system, and that is possible using, for instance, Helix or Knoppix or whatever tools you want to use. We usually use a tool called Encase, which is a commercial tool, but we can also use DD, which we used in forensic investigations as well. And there is stuff like Ghost and DD for Windows as well. And very interestingly, there's stuff like fast blockers, so they will actually give you the ability to write block the hard drive, that you do not accidentally write onto the wrong disk, so all the information is gone. Basically ensure that you create MD5 hashes, and just to be sure that you actually have the same evidence afterwards. And then it's time to basically grab a coffee, very strong coffee, tell your girlfriend or boyfriend that you're not going to come home, and start your own investigation and analyze the data. Yeah, of course, yeah.
What program is you understand? There was an error. What?
Really? Oh, sorry. Sorry, I did not mention that. That is a very, very good question. AIR is called Automated Image and Rescue. It's a CD like Knoppix that will enable you to automatically create images of disks. It's like a graphical user interface, and like Ghost, you can select, copy this hard drive to that hard drive over the network or whatever. It supports it's better than Ghost, because Ghost, all right. It's better than Ghost because basically it supports TCP connections natively, so it can copy it over the network. When you use DD or DD, you can use DD with a pipe and then SSH it over to something else. But with Ghost, for instance, which is very often used on Windows, you cannot copy it. Error is like Knoppix in a way, but it's made for incident response and automatic copies of systems. Okay, we're going to talk about honeypot and binary file analysis. this is probably the most interesting part. We're not going to get too deep into reverse engineering, but I'm going to show you some basic methods how to reverse engineer files and how to deal with it. And first, we're going to choose our tool. First of all, there's Ncase. Ncase is a very, very professional, actually it's the standard tool that you would use in a forensic analysis. It's very good, no point of that, and it's very flexible. There are scripts that will add functionality to the software. There are actually it's accepted at court, which is also very important, and it's developed further, so the people care about it. But they also make lots of money with Ncase. So of course you can use it, but it's very, very pricey as well. So for instance, the German police and the Irish police use it as well. We use it, and probably all of our competitors use it as well. But as I said, it's very, very expensive. Also, you get a URL, and the slides are on my website and also on the CCC website. So if you go to that URL, you will also find a list of forensic tools. Some tools are free. We will going to talk about some free tools later on. And you don't always have to go the commercial way. There are also good open source tools. Okay, as I said, there are open source tools. The best thing is probably the Sluice kit, and it was previously called Task, and it contains all the tools that are available with Ncase. For instance, you could use those tools to create a timeline of events. So it will basically look at the times when the files were created, modified, and this kind of stuff, and it will give you a certain timeline of the event that happened on your system. It is able to analyze NTFS, which is very important because you might have to face Windows systems. And by the way, be aware of streams. NTFS supports streams, so you can basically put one file after another without modifying the file size. Which is, by the way, a feature that is available with Solaris 10 as well. And you can also analyze FAT, ext2, ext3, and BSD-based systems. It's not as professional, but in my opinion, it's very worth taking a look at. It's good, it's stable, and it has a web browser, which will make the use of the software quite conveniently. Okay, of course. The basic, by the way, the web interface is called AutoPsy. It's a web server, and then you can use your browser to basically analyze the evidence. It's very nice. And for instance, you can start grep and regular expression search, these kind of stuff. If you start to do your own forensic analysis, what you can do is, of course, simply browse through the file system and basically just take a look at what happened. You might be able, if you're lucky, you might be able to find some file that the attacker left on the system. You might be able to find some configuration changes or some users that have been added to etc passvd or shadow, or that you might be able to see new home directories or whatever. And of course, there is the automated way of searching, where you actually use those tools available like Sluice kit or Ncase, and you basically try to recover deleted files, or you try to search for hidden information in multimedia files like JPEGs. You search for files that have been created in a certain period of time, or you search for information that are stored on the system, for instance, by performing a keyword search. Okay, yeah, as I said, a keyword search. For instance, if somebody uses an exploit, it's very likely to contain stuff like shell code, maybe op instruction, or SUID if you're fucked, this kind of stuff. So use those terms. And for Ncase, for instance, there are like hundreds of files available, hundreds of extensions that will give you the ability to search for common words, not only in an incident response, but also in a fraud, like a bank account, this kind of stuff. So it's very important to search the evidence for this kind of stuff. And of course, if you do analyze this stuff, do not mount it read only, and in order to be sure not to modify it. We're going to talk about that later on. Yeah, use hash sets and tools available. You could actually buy entire hash sets of operating systems like Windows, and you will get MD5 sums of the correct file, and they can compare it with your own system and see maybe what has been modified. But as we will see tomorrow, MD5 is not a function that is very reliable these days. But well, it might help you anyway. And search for well-known binaries. For instance, we will see later on how we did search for rootkits and how we succeeded, and this might be a way to go as well. Of course, do try to find log files. Take a look at, if you have it, do take a look at all your firewalls, intrusion detection systems, and try to reconstruct the attack that did occur. Of course, yeah, ncase.com is a really good resource for scripts to analyze stuff. As I said, of course, there might be free versions on the internet, but they require a dongle. So yeah, you might end up analyzing it using the toolkit or doing it on your own. And what you will probably face at this point here, at some stage, you will probably have to face binary files. And binary files is a very, very complex area of research, as you will end up having an unknown file that might be a virus, it might be a malware, it might be an exploit. You never know what the story is. So you will face binary file analysis. And first of all, what you have to do is, for binary file analysis, build up your own secure test environment that will help you to analyze the files. Create MD5 sums, and yeah, you can even use a virus scanner to scan a file, but I can tell you that this is not very often very successful. Then use a hex editor or use stuff like file to actually identify the two file type. That will work very often, not always, but it should. Very nice is also try to extract information from the file, because usually hackers tend to pack their executables with stuff like UPX and these kind of stuff, or Neolite or whatever. So basically, you cannot really extract the information. The exe, the executable is still running, but it's packed in a way. So you have to try to unpack it. But this is only true for Windows. And then you can also use the strings command, which is very important to get strings from a binary file, and that might give you information on the type of binary you're facing, and also of the function. Yeah, this is very, very easy to say, but it's very hard. Try to reverse engineer a file. Yeah, well, go ahead. There are papers on the internet that will give you the ability to reverse engineer files, but as we're going to see later on, it's going to be very tough, and if you're not familiar with assembler, you will have a hard time. Yeah, the tools again, some more tools. Sorry, that's a question? Sorry? Okay, with MD5, sorry.
What's wrong with running a file in a secure environment, e.g. a test machine,
yeah, I'm going to
which
talk
is
about
offline?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to talk about that now. Basically, for instance, you might think, hey, well, cool, I got for VMware, and I can run stuff in VMware. But as we're going to see, VMware is not always suitable, because there are ways to detect VMware, and some are very basic, but some are very sophisticated. And an attacker, and we will see that in the binary we're going to analyze in maybe 10 minutes, or maybe 5, that binaries check sometimes for the existence of VMware and do behave differently than they would in a non-VMware environment. So VMware is not always a suitable way to go. So what you do is, basically, the ideal way is to have a separate PC, install the operating system the binaries is on, for instance, Windows or Linux or whatever, and then attach it to like a hub, and then sniff the network connections, and turn on all those stuff like start stuff like firemon, recmon, recshot. That will help you to identify changes that have been made by the binary. For instance, recshot takes a shot of the registry, obviously, and you're able to analyze the difference between the status of the registry before it was before the binary was run, or do start stuff like proc dump, All those binaries of FileMon, you will be able to see which files were opened and which strings were written to the registry, and that's the only way. Or install control is a very good tool on Windows as well that will give you the ability to see what the file has changed. But that is a very hard process, you're right. Also, you can use stuff like LSOF, strings, hexdump, elfgrep, strays if the file is executed, which you should try to avoid, but sometimes it's not always possible. And as I said already, this is a very important point. I did choose to run stuff in VMware first, but programs will get more intelligent and they will try to detect VMware. And we're going to have a very simple example later on. So running VMware is not always the choice to go. Another question? And there's another one, yeah.
But if I copy the disk
Could you speak up, please? Sorry.
If I copy the disk to another computer, same hardware, and run the program, there is no stuff like VMware,
Yeah,
which could be detected.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, if you do not run VMware, then the program will behave usually normally. That's probably the best way to go. I think, is it okay?
Yeah.
And I think there was another question, yeah.
For a honeypot, why not just take the real system as you would normally install it with all your data, perhaps not the real data you were missing, and then put a box between your network and the honeypot machine and just snip the network. And for secure connections like SSL or something like this machine may be able, if you just transfer your keys and fingerprints to that machine, to intercept the SSL connection and do a legal man-in-the-middle attack on it. So it captures the full data, the full contents, and it has all the network traffic that goes to your honeypot.
Yeah, that's right. You can do that, and it's appreciated that you actually do this. But for instance, it's hard, for instance, if somebody uses SCP, it's hard to do a man-in-the-middle attack, for instance, against SSH version 2. But on the other hand, let's say somebody downloads a binary from the internet. You will see it in your IDS, maybe in your firewall logs and in your traffic logs, but you're not going to see the content of the file. You might be able later on to download that file from the same server that person downloaded the file, but you're not going to know what the binary file is all about. You maybe see somebody uses wget from http whatever site.com/ myevilrootkits.tar.gz. You might be able to see that, but maybe 5 minutes later the server is gone. Or if you download the file, you still will be facing binary files. You know that somebody downloaded the file, but you're not going to see what the file is going to modify on my system. Even, okay, what you will see maybe if the system...
But you have the whole full history. You have the binary of the file, because it must go through your system.
Yeah, okay, you have the file, but still you will face to analyze. You have to analyze it afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, but okay.
But you have the full data, the full contents. Everything is go to the black box in the middle, and you have the full data, the full history. You know what your attacker has done to your system.
Okay. I know what. Yeah. Well, this might be a new idea. We never tried that, but that might be a new idea of analyzing honeypots. It's actually a good idea. We never tried that. I don't know if this exists. Maybe this is the way to go. Okay, we go on. We have a sample file analysis on Linux. This file was identified on a web server of a friend, and the file was found on October the 2nd of this year, and it was found in the temp directory of that web server, and it has a very, very unusual file name, which did not make really sense. However, the file command just identified the file as data. It was not said what the story is with the file. It did not say this is an ELF binary or what the file is actually all about. So, okay, well, this was not very difficult. We used the strings command again to extract all the strings from the file, and usually if stuff like UPX is used, then you're going to see only trash, and sometimes you're lucky, like here, this is very easy to see that the file was obviously compressed with UPX, but it might be more difficult. But in this case, we were lucky, and after unpacking the file with UPX, we thought that it was a normal ELF 32-bit binary file. As we did go on, we saw that now with the strings command, after the file has been unpacked, we are able to see that the file is doing some connectivity to the internet, is trying to connect a host which IP we can see here, and yeah, it was later shown, and therefore we had to execute the file because there were no other information what the file is possibly doing. We had to execute the file, and this time we did use VMware because there were no, not really hints that the file would behave differently in VMware. Okay, we could have failed here because if it would have tried to detect like I/O ports of VMware, which is a very common technique, this would have failed. But we tried it, and we found out that using snippets and this kind of stuff, the file was an IRC bot that got onto the system via a vulnerable PHP script. And yeah, well, in a way, it was not really a 0-day, but we were first to analyze the file, and it was 3 days later when the DFN CERT Germany published a warning about the file. Okay, then the next one is very interesting. We actually are investigating a Windows 2003 server currently, so I'm sorry we do not have real-life data from a Windows system, but we're actually working on this. So what I did is I took a file called rada.zip from the Honeynet project, honeynet.org, and this file was presented in the so-called scan of the month, which is like a challenge. You can download it and you can answer questions those guys have asked. And yeah, I think the best one wins the prize or something. And Chris Eagle did the analyze of this file, although it's so simple that actually everyone can do it. So what we do is first we use the file command again. Even if the file is a Windows file, it's good to use the file command in Unix. It will give you a certain certainty of what the file is like. So you use the file command first to see, okay, it's a normal zip archive, obviously, but it could have been renamed. So we unpack it, and then we see, okay, cool, it contains a file called rada.exe. And again, the file command tells us that rada.exe is a normal MS-DOS executable. So we know that we might be able to use the string commands again to obtain a list of strings, and this is probably a Windows file. So we did do that, and we saw like lots of trash again. And it says here that basically it did contain trash, but in the end it did say kernel32.dll, msvb, vm60.dll, and some other stuff. And you could see that because of the use of MSVB VM60, you could 60 that this program was actually developed in, or very likely developed in Visual Basic. So it's not using MSVCRT0, which is the file that would be used if the file would have been compiled or programmed in Visual C or in C. So again, we used the strings command again, and we did. This is actually the header that you would see on Windows when you right-click on a file and go to Properties. They added those information to the file just for educational purposes, usually, and they did say company name is malware, so it's only an educational example, but usually there could be any information or just none. So the strings command is very interesting and very valuable, especially what we did here is you have to be aware of the different switches that is available to strings, because in Windows some information is available in Unicode only, and you're not going to find it if you do not use the special switches of strings. Okay, if we go on, we did firstly rename the file to rada.bin because we didn't want to execute it accidentally on our Windows system. So we did rename it, and afterwards we do believe, because we did only see a lot of trash and some DLL files in the file, that the file had been obfuscated in some way. So there's a very good program, it's called PIDE. It's actually a program to identify the program that has been used to obfuscate a file. And it did identify, again, UPX, which is very common among hackers for some reason. And we did try to use UPX to unpack the files, but unfortunately this did not succeed. UPX did say that the file has been tampered with, it has been modified, it has been hacked, so we could not unpack the file. However, what you could do is you could use like debuggers like OLIDBG, which is a very good program, or again Python to dynamically, while it's running, unpack the program. But unfortunately, this is going to run the file, so you might be infected, just to let you be aware of. And so afterwards, we can see all those strings that were in this binary file. And what it did contain was an URL, some script like download, upload CGI, a local directory, and here it obviously tried to install itself into the autorun folder. And very interestingly is this one here, and that's what you asked about. This one here it probably tries to detect the installation of VMware tools. And later on, we saw that the file actually checked for the MAC address of the network address as well, because there's a certain MAC address that is used by VMware. But you could trick the errata.file by just not installing VMware tools and modifying your MAC address. But we did find out this later on. So basically, here is a very nice example where software tries to detect VMware because it does not want to be analyzed and detected. And interesting enough, were some command line switches that the file did reveal, and this did bring up the file. And you could actually configure the software to be used in an exploit or in a way of an exploit. As I said, it installs itself to the registry, and just to ensure that it is executed on every system start. It checks for VMware, as I said, and it supports various command line switches, as we found out later on. And what it does, actually, it downloads a file from a remote server, and it uses a non-visible instance of the Internet Explorer, and you could actually give it commands, so it would execute those commands on the remote system. It's very sneaky. Okay, and I will hand over to Christian again in a case study.
This case study is actually what happened to one of our honeypot systems. Yeah, this honeypot system was good old Red Hat 7.3. A high interaction honeypot we deployed in Frankfurt. Yeah, our previous presentation, how does the guy called? The Thomas described that the honeypot, what he was deploying, actually Red Hat 7.3 also was not hacked. Our fortunately was hacked, and this is a very interesting case because it was a real hack. It was something like 2 weeks outside. It was just a box without any surveillance, because we wanted to see what a normal user would see if the box gets compromised. So we wanted not to have any surveillance on it. And this experience was actually quite successful. 3 years after connecting it to the internet, it was exploited by an Apache exploit, and the attacker uploaded his own data, and he installed a lot of tools. Okay, of course, Apache was running not as a root process, so the attacker used an exploit to get root on the box. After this, he installed an IRC bouncer, which is used by mostly by. Okay, it's the other way around. So IRC is many hackers uses IRC to communicate with each other. Okay, but some motivation is going around. Oh no. Okay. So he installed IRC, and they had installed also some rootkits, trying to erase the traces what he was causing on the box. And he was also trying to hack some other systems from our box. And because we had no surveillance on the box, actually we couldn't be fully reconstruct what happened. However, we was sitting and analyzing it actually many nights. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me say some words why we did not monitor the system at all. It was part of my pre-diploma thesis for the university, and we wanted to show what the difference is and what the likelihood of this successful reconstruction of an attack is if you do not monitor the system. So that was the reason why we actually did not monitor it. Of course, in a real environment, or if you do your stuff, please do monitor the stuff, and please do deploy IDSs, firewalls, and these kind of stuff, especially if somebody attacks other systems. As we said, the guy that hacked our system hacked other systems, not only from our system, but he logged in via SSH from other systems in Tokyo, which were registered already on dshield.org that they have been used for other attacks. So, but as I said, we said, look, we're not going to use any surveillance, we're not going to use any monitoring system. We want to see out of the box. We take a box, put it on the internet, and after 2 weeks we got it back and we see what the story is. That was our project, or my project for university. And what we did is, it took us very, very long to actually find files on the system. They were hidden in a directory which did not have any name, or actually it did contain a space, so you did not really see it, or, well, you could see it with ls, but it was not very obvious. So we found some files. It's going to be very small, so I'm going to read it out for the people in the back. What we found was a file called J. What could J be? We didn't know, so we applied all those binary file stuff that we did before, and it was very funny because the file was just J, but in the file you could see that there was something like usage sense.p just sense, and then we did search for Google is your friend as always, you know. We did find some information on the file, and the file was actually part of the so-called devil rootkit, so we did identify it. And then was a file .all, and the .all file was actually identified as a local root exploit, and we use again the strings command. And if you find stuff like your owned or shellcode or I'm going to do this and that or exploit failed, if you search Google for this, and you will find information about exploits, because there are sometimes very unique features in an exploit. Some people make comments, some greet their friend or whatever. Some say if they are if they do not like OpenBSD, for instance, they're going to say, "Look, Theo, we hacked you again. Your operating system sucks." And so you will find information that are very valuable if you go to Google or any other information resource to try to identify a file, even if it's binary. You don't even have to reverse engineer just to find out what it is. And of course, you can just take the file, put it on another Red Hat 7.3 system, and just see what the story is, what happens. Just execute it and just see that you're root somehow. And then there was another file, it's called .kde, and this was a part of the so-called lint sniffer, and it's a very powerful Ethernet sniffer. Of course, there were files like log cleaner, which were used to clean logs. There was stuff, P, for instance. P is another local root exploit. I don't know why those guys had 2 root exploits. Maybe they didn't know how to use the first one. Don't know. Actually, it's the same exploit, interesting enough, so they did not try to find another exploit. Maybe it could have been that that was part of their rootkit, or that they were just too lazy and just copied everything over. Very interesting is that there were programs called SSL port and SSL stop, which basically changed the port SSL is listening on, or they actually fully stopped the SSL support in the web server, because the SSL engine of the web server was exploitable due to an OpenSSL bug. So basically, they fixed the system to ensure that no other hacker hacked the system. That is actually a process you see very often, because once people own system, they want to be the one that's owning system. So they're going to sometimes even patch, as we saw, the vulnerabilities. So they have their own system, they have their root account, and then they know nobody is going to exploit it probably because I disabled the SSL support. Wipe is another very interesting program, and it's a modified version of vanish.c, which I found with Google as well, and it cleans various log files, and it was used on our honeypot as well.
Just an addition, you see that a lot of file name is starting with a dot. This is a very simple method hiding files, because if you are on the Linux system and you do the ls command, all file names starting with a dot won't be displayed, because they saw that this is dot or dot dot, you know, the directory itself, and that's an easy way.
So we come to our lessons learned, and actually you can learn a lot from deploying a honeypot. It takes time, which is probably the most annoying part of it, because you're going to be sitting there and analyzing everything for hours. So when I first read the book of Lance Spitzner about honeypots, I was like, well, 40 hours for every 30 minutes, that can't be true, that's too much. But to be honest, we did spend more. And for instance, let's imagine somebody downloads a rootkit or their personal Uber hacker toolkit from the internet, then they extract it, then they start binaries. What you can do in 30 minutes is huge. And you can start, let's say, you download 5 files, unzip those or untar them, and then basically you run different files, open new collections, download new stuff. You can do stuff in half an hour, which takes ages to just analyze. And if somebody is very fast, especially if they use automated kits that are available, rootkits for instance, or automated script, then this will even be faster because you don't have to type it in. A very, very interesting thing that we also saw is it's hard to actually analyze a honeypot or actually any hacked web server or any hacked server if you do not have firewalls, intrusion detection systems, these kind of stuff. It's very, very hard. And that was something that I wanted to prove with my thesis, and I do believe that we did so. Even the attack was not very sophisticated. We could say it's maybe, it's let's say a medium level attack, but it's very hard to actually identify the person who did this stuff, the techniques used. And imagine if you have a Windows 2003 system, for instance, where somebody dynamically injects code into the running kernel. You're not going to find that and stuff without an intrusion detection system, probably, and without a firewall, or without monitoring the traffic. Then very interesting stuff also is there are software pieces available, software tool that will help you identifying rootkits. Some very good, or not really good, but some tools available are Check Rootkit and Rootkit Hunter. Those tools say that they are able to identify rootkits, and I do believe that they actually do, but they did not in our case. Manual review is also very important, because especially that was our experience, if those tools, if those rootkits have been truncated into chunks, for only maybe somebody picked bits and pieces from that rootkit, took bits and pieces from the other rootkit and put them all together to this evil rootkit or evil box, then most of the software is not going to detect it, and neither CH Rootkit or RK Hunter did succeed in detecting honeypots. And as I said, honeypots are very, very fun, challenging, and they're just cool. Kristen is going to talk about how to be code-proof.
But before I'm talking about how to be code-proof, one very interesting thing, what happened to that honeypot in the case study was that the attackers also left some IRC logs on the system. And actually, or it seemed to be that it was more than one attacker, because one group of attacker was speaking Polish, and one attacker group was speaking some kind of Serbian language. Of course, we didn't understand none of it, and it took us some time to translate of those conversations, and which was very interesting that the Polish guys was talking about that they got some kind of hardware to crack the telephone cards for the public telephone system, so they can call for free. Yeah, that was some kind of funny. Okay, how to be code-proof? Yeah. Sorry. How to be curve-proof is actually, if you are just maintaining a honeypot for your fun or inside your company just for IDS, actually you don't need it. The only reason when you need to be curve-proof if you want to really go for the curve and punish the attacker. In most cases, it is not necessary because, yeah, why don't you do that? But in some cases, for example, if you know that somebody inside your company stealing data and you installing a honeypot to catch that guy, you may need to be curve-proof to later on, be able to stay with your honeypot before the curve. Okay, and the most important thing being curve-proof is the chain of custody must be kept at all time. Chain of custody means that chain of custody, the definition will be on the next slide. It's very complex, but it means that from the beginning till the end, you always have to know what's happening. Your evidence have to be under control. Okay, so this is the most important questions about the chain of custody. Who had access to the evidence? What have we done with the evidence? What happened to the evidence? And how to be sure that all the analysis what we done to the evidence is really done on the original or the data as the original and it was not modified before the analysis. Okay, the definition of the chain of custody. The first, that a person must be always responsible for the evidence. This means that a person has to be named at each case. So after that point that the system gets compromised, you always have to be one person have to be responsible for the things. And if that, for example, if that person who makes the DD image, so gets the evidence, give it to the people who analyzes it, those transactions must be documented very well. Yeah, the nice definition you can read there, but actually this is the main point of maintaining the chain of custody. As we mentioned in the introduction, the documentation is the key. Documentation must be that can be written in written form, can be electronic form, can be a photo, can be anything, but the status of the evidence must be always documented. Okay.
Does this apply to continental law? Does this concept of chain of custody apply to continental law or only?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. This is also some more definition of chain of custody. Yeah, this is describing that documentation is very important, and the documentation always have to contain from where the evidence is come, when does that step is happening, who is responsible for that steps, what will happen, and what is the outcome actually, and where is the evidence stored. And if you are doing such investigations, you always have to keep in your mind that this is very important, that you may punish people who did nothing. So you always have to be very sure that what you are doing. And if you're not really sure or you make a mistake, the whole evidence does not worth anything. Okay. And of course, the main rule that nobody is guilty still, since it does not proven that is still it's not proven that he is guilty. Okay. Okay. A testimony or a report, we can call it however we want, must contain a detailed description of each step. As I just described you, what happened in that step, where, when, who, okay, and dates and locations are very, very important. Yes, it is awful lot of paperwork. So you have to be prepared, and you just cannot say, oh, I don't feel like writing so much, so I don't want to just do it. No, you cannot. If one step is missing, the chain is broken, so it's not an evidence anymore. Okay, how can you help yourself if you are in such a situation? Creating a photos that can save a lot of time. For example, you don't have to describe where you find the evidence if you just make a photo. Or if you find that the evidence was just, of course, it's not in the honeypot, but if you are doing incident response and you are finding that the computer was just slashed with a big hammer when you get there, you can create a photo or take a photo, and you don't have to describe that what happened. Okay, think before you act. I already told you that this is very important. And if you are really serious, ask an attorney. We are not an attorney. So if you are really want to do this stuff and you are not sure, ask somebody who can help you. Of course, this will cost a lot of money. Okay, and describe every possible details you find. It doesn't matter if it seems unimportant for you. Doesn't matter, just describe it. We have a lot of cases when afterwards some detail gets important. Okay.
Okay, before I start to talk about the legal aspects of operating honeypots, which are obviously quite interesting, I'm going to add something to what Christian said. Well, just imagine, for instance, I was involved in an incident response where we had a call and somebody said, look, we have a new administrator on our primary domain controller, and we do not know this person, we do not know who added this user, would you please help us? That was all the information we had. And it was a very large financial institution, and actually other financial institutions are their customers, because that was a company that does credit card transactions. So it was very serious stuff, and we found out that I think she called us on the 2nd of October, and basically we found out that the user was created in September. Then we later on found out that it did go back to like March. And so what you have to do is you have to document everything. You have to ensure that you actually know what happened, because this one did go to court, and we did have to prove, because it was an employee that did commit all these stuff. So we had to know. We had to prove our actions, and we had to defend ourselves in court, our actions. So the chain of custody and the documentation you have, and even if you have just pictures, that will help you to survive in court. And believe me, it's very hard. But now, anyway, we talk about legal aspects. First of all, as Christian already said, we're not lawyers. We have a lawyer, of course, and we did talk to him, and we did talk to some experts. But unfortunately, there's a question, maybe somebody could hand over the microphone to him. I'm going to stop for a second.
Hello? It's not a question, it's just a statement really of information. In England, you don't need to use a lawyer. Who you can contact is the high-tech crime unit.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. I don't know if there's an equivalent in Germany, but In England, definitely they will help you every step of the way.
Yeah, I can actually say something. I worked this year for more than a half year in Ireland and in the UK. So we know that they have digital crime squads that you can actually call, and that will help you to survive and to collect information that you need. I'm not quite sure. Maybe I don't think that you should call your local police station. Hey guys, I've been hacked. What should I do? And they will probably hang up the phone. Maybe like the Bundeskriminalamt or the Landeskriminalamt, they might be able to help. They probably are, but they definitely. I do not doubt their experience, their knowledge. I'm sorry, but I simply don't know. I do suppose that we have something, and I do know that for Ireland, for instance, where I worked several months, and in the UK, this does exist. And yeah.
They do collaboration here with Germany. I don't know who the organisation is.
Okay.
But I'm in touch with the high-tech crime unit. I can find out from them who they communicate with here.
Yeah, that's very valuable. Yeah, it's okay. I do suppose they probably are able, and I do believe that they are very knowledgeable people. But anyway, what we're going to talk about now is stuff that we got to know from a lawyer. So do not believe us. We could be wrong. We all stupid, lazy guys, and this might be all wrong. But if you think about the stuff that will be on the slides, some stuff is very critical. Actually, as I found out, it seems to be okay to install a honeypot, although you might think, well, I mean, you can also leave your car open with a key in it, and then just see what happens. It's more or less the same. But the thing is, which is actually very, very interesting, are you able or are you allowed to monitor your car or your system and see what the story is? That might be a problem when it comes to data protection, privacy laws, and people that might be spotted trying to break into your system might sue you afterwards. So that is a very, very critical point. And this is, I'm not an English native speaker. I try to translate this term, and I hope it's right. If you install a honeypot, you're not aiding somebody, you're not helping somebody to commit a crime. In Germany, there's a special, and I do believe that in England and other countries there's such a law as well. That would be you help somebody to commit a crime. And installing a honeypot is not helping somebody to commit a crime, but it can become. Yeah.
One addition, there's a hack around the second point of the monitoring. So if you just gives a warning message, somehow on the system, doesn't matter. So sometimes also production system gives out warning that you may be monitored and stuff. And you have that warning in it, then you won't have any problems with monitoring because you warned the attacker that the system is monitored.
Yeah, that's very important. That could be, for instance, displayed as a SSH banner or talent banner. That might be able to give you the ability to persecute the hacker afterwards. Maybe he has a question in the front row. Do you have a question here? Go ahead.
What is a typical setup of a honeypot or honeynet with respect to the visible part of the network? Like we have a central router, then we have demilitarized zone, then a firewall, and where in this setup stays
Good
the
point.
honeypot and honeynet?
Good point. And there's actually a question in the work as well. Good point. First of all, do not place it in your internal network. Anyway, because this thing is going to get exploited. It's going to be hurt. You're going to get hurt if you put it in your own network. And what you should do is, for instance, what we did not put it in our production environment at all. We did go to the internet, and you get cheap servers for like 40 euros at anywhere basically, and you can get those servers, get maybe 2 of them, and just start the honeypot there. I wouldn't actually use it in a corporate environment, and at least not in the internal network. What you should do probably is you should create a separate DMZ. And you should basically use stuff like traffic shapers and these kind of stuff to prevent people from, for instance, using denial of service attacks. So I would say that in a corporate environment, maybe at least have what you could do is, for instance, place it beside your web server, which is in a DMZ. You could do that to lure the attacker away from your real production system to the so-called easy target, what we had on the first slides. But I suppose if you go to honeynet.org, there will be some network diagrams, and you will see it, because it's going to get in depth. We could talk about it, and if you meet me or us later on in the bar, we could tell you about it. We could discuss it where it's suitable. In the back?
I read a paper from the, I guess it was the University of Aachen,
Yeah.
I'm not sure about this, which states that the black hats know there is honeypot technology, and they, by risking to hack a honeypot, they know they might be monitored. So,
Okay. Well, the thing is, if you were here in the first place, the talk that was before us, the guy said, look, well, we have a honeypot, but it's not being exploited so far. This is very funny, actually, because they do deploy a network that is meant to be exploited, but it's never got exploited. But anyway, they say, for instance, Maximilian Dornseif, who is the guy that did the fireware stuff, and he did something on the first day. He says that basically, I do believe that honeypots are useless. Well, the thing is, in my opinion, this is not entirely true, because it gives you so much new knowledge, so much new technology to work with. It's just even if it's just a way to improve your own knowledge, it's worth it. And he says, well, look, people are going to detect this is a honeypot, and of course it's never going to get exploited, and they're going to detect the real systems. We do have customers, and I don't know people that do run beside their real production system a honeypot. And what you can do, if you have, like, let's say you have 5 Solaris boxes and they're all very hardened, and then within that range, for some reason you have a Windows 2003 system which is unpatched. This might be suspicious, but even if you patch up to quite a good level, and then you can even see whether there are new exploits available. For instance, I do know those guys that have the biggest internet pipe in Ireland. It's a university, and those guys get hit with really like the zero-day stuff because they have the biggest pipe in the entire country. You know, Ireland is a very small country, but they have some big pipes. And if you run honeypots there, even if their systems are patched up to date, you will get the zero-day stuff because the hackers want to have the big pipes. So I do believe that it's worth running honeypots. And of course there are ways, and we're going to show it if we hopefully have some time, how to detect, for instance, HoneyD, which is a very low interaction honeypot, or how to detect VMware. But if you have like an entire system, if you have like high interaction honeypot, I don't think it's going to get spotted. Is that okay?
The paper stated that when a hacker attacks your system, he acknowledges there might be a honeypot, so he can't sue you over logging his actions.
Okay, now I know what you understand. Sorry, I did not hear it in the first place. Well, the thing is, if we go on to the next slide, first of all, of course, if somebody starts to attack a system, he or she will know this might be illegal. Especially if he starts to break some stuff, or if he injects shellcode or whatever, uses an exploit. This is illegal, of course. It's illegal probably in any country, maybe not in Brazil or somewhere else, in China or whatever, but it's illegal here, definitely. And the thing is really getting tricky. If you start to re-attack the attacker, this is really get very tricky. And this point is actually the most scary part of doing honeypots, because if somebody starts to hack other systems, then you're going to get screwed up, because you yourself, as the provider of the honeypot, may have to charge legal charges. So you might end up being in court. And then it comes to the point whether you did help somebody to attack another system by simply providing the honeypot. You know what I said in the first place? It's not illegal to actually deploy the honeypot, but if somebody starts to use that honeypot to hack other systems, it might get very tricky. And you might be charged as well, because you simply provided the system. But this is the case in any network. If your system is hacked, then other systems are hacked.
The paper stated that if the honeypot is reasonably secured, you won't have problems defending your point. So if they put a snort inline IDTS, which should prevent attackers from using the honeypot to do denial of service attacks or something like that. So if you could show, they stated if you could show you deployed the honeypot to the best practices you won't have
Okay.
a
Well,
problem.
let me ask two things, or let me say two things about this. First, we did not ever face a legal charge in Germany about honeypots. This will happen someday, and we don't know what the story is. There are different people having different means and different opinions. However, are you really sure? And we will see what the story is. But do you believe that like a lawyer or a judge actually accepts snort inline logs? You know, I'm not too sure. Especially if you say, well, look here is a CD-ROM with the snort logs, and during the process you just come with a laptop to the judge, modify the file, give it to him, and say, look, now it's modified. You know, you never know. Okay, if you have like MD5 sums, then you're more or less secure, but you never know whether the logs have been tampered with. So I would be very suspicious whether that would be allowed in court. Here's the question as well. The micro?
Okay. Then breaching the security of the system is an offense. So I think you should be quite clear juristically if you have a honeypot which is secured to average stage of the arch, because then the attacker already perpetrated an offense. And that would be similar, for example, to having a gun in a house which is locked away. If somebody is breaking into your house and then breaking your gun safe and then killing somebody with your gun, you have protected it. You have perhaps not protected it to the highest possible level, but you have protected it.
I guess no, this is not the situation. The situation is more like you have your car, you shut the door, but you don't close it. So if somebody opened the door and steal your radio, the insurance company won't pay you because you didn't lock the door. And I guess this is the same situation.
Well, it depends, because I lock my car, but I know that there are vulnerabilities with my car lock. But I still used the standard security which was available.
Yeah, can I make a comment? The question in court would be, what is average security, and was the system secured the way it should have been? And that would be the topic, and the case would be all about that. And that would be the problem. You have to prove that it was secure. Other people could say it wasn't secure, and there would be a huge debate. And you can't say when you set up a honeypot now, it's secure enough to stand in court to be so that you have no problems in court. You can't do that. So the problem persists.
Well, the thing is, we should go on now. We can discuss it later on because this is a very huge field. We're all not lawyers, so there's one question from the cameraman actually.
Yes. The problem is more when you have a honeypot set up and you are lacking security updates. For instance, if you knowingly have a system which is vulnerable on the system, on your network as a honeypot, and somebody uses this could be a problem, because if you knowingly don't have security updates installed, it's your problem.
Well, the funny thing is that the whole concept of honeypots in a way. Anyway, we will talk about this later on. We will be in the bar, we will be around, so we can discuss it later on. We simply go on because we have some more slides to cover. And this is the detection of honeypots. Where I hand over.
Detection of honeypots. Thomas, in the last presentation, was already somehow discussed this, but I think we have a broader view on this, and we're not just discussing local detection of a honeypot, but we are also discussing somehow remote detection of a honeypot system. I guess these are the main properties where you can make guess that this is a honeypot. You never be sure on this, but so in some cases you can make a good guess that this is a honeypot. For example, as we see in the last presentation, if response times are heavily different, for example. Okay, or there are banners or registry entries or something different, something interesting. Inconsistency is your best friend, actually. We will talk about this on the next slide, I guess. Social properties of the system. Even if the system is looking, you see no special data on it, or no special parameters or nothing, but if you guess that if the system is called production server, web shop, I don't know what, and you see there is no traffic on it, yeah, you may guess that it's maybe not that what it's claimed to be. Okay, network sniffing, we see it also in the last presentation, so we don't have to demo it. It's actually good for us. Yeah, network traffic can be also malicious. Yeah. Okay, VMware, traces of VMware. Of course, if you find out that you are on the VMware system, it's not surely a honeypot, but VMware is used a lot of times for setting up honeypots. So you may be warned. You should be warned. Okay, local detection, search traces for a honeypot system, honeypot tools. Yeah, we see it also. SEBEC, we mentioned SEBEC here. Last presentation, because we have to hurry up a little bit, so I have to make it now a bit faster, because we have a special demo what we want to show you of any case. Not only the bad guys make mistakes, that's very true, because if you put your you create an installation for your honeypot tools, and you install your honeypot tools and you forgot to delete, for example, that folder, and it's called honeypot tools, then yeah, I guess the attacker will know that this is a honeypot. Vulnerabilities existing also in honeypot products. This is not really common at that moment, but it will come. Okay, just be creative. Remote detection is much harder. At high interaction honeypots, it's almost impossible, because in that case, it's the real operating system which interacts with you, so you see actually no difference. Again, response times, banners that you can see from outside, maybe your best friends, and also vulnerabilities. Okay, honeypot detections, we have some examples on it. In HoneyD, earlier versions of HoneyD had, for example, the vulnerabilities. If you send an invalid TCP packet, which has the SYN and the RST flag set at the same time, and you send it to that server, which was actually a HoneyD, it responded to you, but a normal server wouldn't do that. This was a vulnerability in the HoneyD, which was actually corrected. Spotting SEBEC, that was the theme of the last presentation. Okay, inconsistencies of the TCP IP stack. This is also a vulnerability in HoneyD, and this is actually yeah, something what's firstly published to you. This is what we discovered in HoneyD, that and we will also demo this, that HoneyD actually responds in some cases with wrong TTL values or with wrong window values, because he uses that values from the underlying operating system, and it behaves not like a real operating system. So, for example, if you are emulating Windows on a Linux system, and even if the nmap fingerprint is the same, so if you do an nmap -0, you will see that the TCP IP stack is the same. But if you're doing HPing against the system, the normal Windows will answer you with a TTL value from a real Windows system, 128 actually, and the HoneyD emulating a Windows 2000 will respond you with a TTL worth 64, which is typically for Linux systems. Yeah. Okay, we have also created a small table for some of the operating system we could test with the values. you see that there are typical values for typical operating systems, and if you doing that HPing stuff against a system and it responds differently, then you may guess that something is not kosher.
Maybe one point to add before we go on and show this is that you can actually use this technique to detect operating systems through firewalls. When they have one port open, and then you can actually detect the real operating system that is running on a box, even if there's a firewall, and that is just letting through HTTP, for instance. And now we're going to show, maybe while Christian prepares its system, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we're going to show. As Christian correctly said, this technique is new. We did report this to Niels Provost, who is the guy who wrote HPing. He said, look, well, I did use the P0F. Yeah, well, yeah, anyway. Yeah, he said, look, yeah, well, I did use the P0F stuff and all the TTLs, so it should be all right. But as we spotted, it does not work. It simply is a method to simply detect HoneyD. And what Christian is going to do is he's going to use a tool called HPing. The website is hping.org. It's very cool. You can actually construct your own TCP packets. And what he's going to do is he's going to start HoneyD first. And if it's started, it's going to emulate an operating system. And I think it's, I suppose we are going to emulate Windows.
Yeah, we are going to emulate actually a Windows XP system. Once in HoneyD, and the other counterpart of the XP system is actually the host system which the VMware is running on. So I just show you that if you are doing that nmap stuff against, this is actually the system, the host system, the real Windows XP system. And you will see that the fingerprint, that it tells you that this is a Microsoft Windows 2003 .NET XP, yeah, I don't know. And if you are doing the same nmap scanning against the HoneyD, you see that HoneyD is working on the other window. And you will actually get the same fingerprint as you got for the real Windows XP system. You see actually that we have different ports open, but this doesn't matter. The fingerprint is the same, so the TCP IP stack should be the same. But if you are clear, okay, if you are doing an HPing against, this is now the HoneyD system. Minus C, the parameter minus C is actually the count, how much packets we will send, and the minus P that we are doing our test against the port 22. And you see that's the values, you have the TTL value, and if you do the same, actually the same test against the port 139 on the real Windows system, you will see actually that the TTL value is 128, and in the first case the TTL value was 64. So this is, and we know that it couldn't be, although the nmap tells us that this is a Windows XP system, we see here that the TTL value tells us that it's a Linux.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure whether the people in the back can see it, but basically, you would take a look at the TTL as well as the ID field or even the window size, and then you would be able to see that there are some inconsistencies, and you would guess that this is a system emulated by HoneyD. Of course, it doesn't always work. For instance, if you emulate Windows on Windows, you're not going to get very far from here. But if you use, for instance, Linux to emulate Windows, this works perfectly. Okay, and I suppose we should go on because we're running out of time. And Christian is talking about detecting VMware, I suppose, now. Are we going to? Yeah. And I promise next year we're going to present using OpenOffice. There you go. Yeah. Well, to defend ourselves, those are corporate corporate notebooks, and to keep my boss happy and quiet and make him pay everything, I had to use this design and this operating system. Sorry.
The same here. Okay, how VMware detection, I think I have to do it also very fast. You can detect actually VMware only locally. Remotely you cannot detect VMware since this is the real operating system you are interacting with, so you have no chance remotely. But locally you can detect on very easy ways, for example, to check if VMware tool is installed, or to check the name of the BIOS or driver names, because some drivers are by default installed or they're used by VMware and they have special names. Of course, you can rename it if you are capable enough, but I guess the most people doesn't bother renaming VMware devices, so this is actually quite a good way. The VMware magic value. There are an I/O port existing in the VMware tools. For example, it is used to communicate between the host system and the VMware system. For example, with Windows XP, if you do drag and drop between the emulated system and the host system, and this special port is existing to allow this drag and drop. But it has also some other functions. But already you can actually use that to do funny things. You can move the mouse, set the clipboard, give pop-ups. Yeah, a lot of possible things. Okay, I have to. I'm doing it. Okay, so anomalies are always your best friend. VMware fingerprinting tools existing using those techniques, but automated in a tool or anomalies actually, which very easy to detect if you having a strange number of memory installed. This is typically VMware. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Future of the honeypots. Honey tokens mean that you don't install a whole system, a whole honeypot system. You just install some items. For example, in a database, you have one entry which is not used by any real application, and if this item is accessed, that it's an alarm. So it's actually a honeypot inside an application. Wireless honeypots, it's honeypots using wireless technology. Spam honeypots, honeypot farms, and search engine honeypots. Honeypot farms are more honeypots distributed. Spam honeypots. What are spam honeypots?
We're actually going to skip this part because I'm sorry we do not have enough time. So we're going to do the summary. Well, 2 hours seems not to be enough to cover this this interesting topic. However, I hope, or we both hope, that you see honeypots as a very interesting, a very new field of research where you can do your own work, where you can do your own investigations. Do take a look at the stuff provided by honeynet.org. It's excellent, it's brilliant stuff. You can analyze binary files, and actually there's a very interesting challenge for November, and I would be very happy if you would mail me your results. There's a binary and it's obfuscated with a very interesting packer, and you have to unpack it and see what the story is with that file. So mail me your results or put them online, submit them to honeynet.org, and you will maybe get a prize. Yeah. However, there are some other good reads that you should maybe take a look at. Computer Forensics, it's a very good book. It actually covers stuff on Windows as well, which is which you will not find very often. Honeypots is a special. It's the Bible of honeypots. And Computer Forensics is a German book, and there's even an IX article. You will all find the stuff in the web. Honeypot Forensics, Windows Forensics and Incident Recovery is a book which only deals with Windows. This is very new and very unusual because usually you don't have books about Windows. People say, well, look, there's even Windows and there are some tools available, but this book only deals with Windows. This is excellent. Incident Response is very old, no, not really old, but good book. Security Warrior is actually quite good. because it introduced you to reverse engineering and other stuff. There's even some, yeah, Christian, go back one slide. Yeah, yeah. We have some very old reads. The people said in the previous presentation that this was, I think, in 1998. I do believe it's 1990, whatever. Those are good reads. Take a look at them and take a look at all the online URLs that are available. Ein bisschen langsamer, Christian. Ein bisschen langsamer. Ein bisschen langsamer. Yeah. Take a look. Well, all those URLs are just available for you. Take a look at the presentation offline and go to those websites that are really good. And now we can go on and well, go on again if you want to. And yeah, actually, we got involved into the German HoneyNet project. Although the previous guy said there is already a German HoneyNet project. There seems to be not really a connection. There's kind of loose association at honeynet.de. And if you want to join, if you want to take part, just contact either Christian or myself. And even Ernst Young is looking for new employees, so if you want to just join us. And yeah, if you go on, thank you for your long patience. The presentation is available at my website, which is wolfgarten.com/ccc. And now, for somebody, if there's somebody who has a question, we might have a very special surprise. So. Thanks for all your attention and long patience. And if you want to, you can actually not leave but ask questions. Because there might be a special prize as a... Oh, you might be the person to get it. Microphone? Or if you want to...
I have a question regarding forensics. I knew two cases. The first one is where the guy who attacked the port of Houston was distributed denial of service, and the second one is a guy who had child porn stuff on his PC, and both were catched, and both claimed that they had installed a Trojan on the computer. And my question is, do you think it's possible to check if the computer was owned by another person, or if the owner did the attack?
Yeah, I do believe that this is possible because, for instance, the guy that programmed the Sobik virus was caught because they found some information in Word data that actually, it's like an ID in every Word document, and this ID can be tracked back to a computer. So there are ways to detect it. I do believe that with intelligent technology and with the use of it, you might be able to get it. And I do suppose, come up here, come in the front, because we have a very, very special prize for you. Come up here, and we have a very, very special prize for you. You know, we're talking about honeypots, and actually we have a pot of honey for yourself, so you have your own honey.
We want to contribute that you build your first honeypot.
For a question, we will be available today in the bar tomorrow, and just email us if you have more questions. Thank you, and bye-bye.